Alright, so today we're going to be talking about Sherry Birkin. Sherry Birkin is a character that's been around basically since the start. Resident Evil 2, she was a little girl, and she was a big part of the story in Resident Evil 2, obviously with her parents being essentially the main villains of the game. Now, in terms of what we're going to go over with her story today, it's going to be more so the stuff that happens between 2 and 6, because there was a few interesting points that happen in that time that I feel not many people would know, and are genuinely quite interesting. So we're going to be doing that today. A little bit different from normal, but obviously, like I've said, her early kind of life is already known about because she was involved in the outbreak in Raccoon City and stuff like that, because she's literally in the game. So we're going to go over the stuff that happens after that. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump into it, going over the middle part of the story for Sherry Birkin all the way up to Resident Evil 6. So soon after the events of Resident Evil 2 and the outbreak in Raccoon City, Sherry was found by the authorities and placed in state custody. And the government basically used her for their own research. As we know, during the outbreak in Raccoon City, Sherry was infected with the G virus, but was treated with a vaccine not long after by her mother. But because of her exposure to the virus, she gained kind of like a permanent ability to regenerate. You see that a lot in Resident Evil 6. There's one point specifically in Resident Evil 6 where she gets like a bit of metal stuck in her back, and when Jake pulls it out, it regenerates itself. Which does imply, that she still has that kind of G virus baseline still in her body. But yeah, she was taken in by the authorities and was basically guaranteed safety by Leon, who was then basically offered to work as an agent in the anti-umbrella pursuit and investigation team, which is obviously a huge part of Resident Evil 4. You find out about him that he's more of an agent now instead of a police officer. He definitely did go up the ranks a little bit after the events of RE2, so it does make sense. Now, because Sherry was so important, because she still had that kind of G-Virus kind of baseline in her body, she was pretty much always on the radar of like high ups in Umbrella, and she was kept basically under strict lockdown, and she lived in the household of Derek C. Simmons, who, if you don't know, is actually the main villain basically of Resident Evil 6. He basically rose Sherry Birkin from a young age until she was old enough to go out on her own. Though he also did his own private research on her. Obviously, he was aware that she was still carrying the G virus in her body, and he did manage to kind of make the C virus with her blood samples. Basically, like, he generated his own virus, which is obviously the dominant virus in the storyline for Resident Evil 6 as a whole. So he's not really the nicest dude anyway, but give him credit, he looked after her, I guess. But either way, still a villain. After the death of Wesker in around 2009 in Africa, Sherry was offered a chance to be free of basically being in protective custody, and she was then offered the role of essentially being a federal agent for any kind of government officials and stuff like that. And obviously she accepted because she has experience working with and being around bioweapons and bioterrorism, so she did kind of fall into that work quite easily. So then in 2012, she did work under the Division of Security Operations. It was basically a government organisation that was built to investigate and combat bioterrorism. Kind of like the BSAA, but a bit less combat focused and more undercover research and stuff like that. Around this stage though, the C virus was basically a viral weapon and was being tested basically all over the world. And to combat this, Sherry was asked to locate Jake, who is obviously the son of Wesker, bring him back to the United States so that they could get his blood samples as vaccine research. Obviously, we find out that Jake, being Wesker's son, the C virus doesn't have any effect on him. Like, he is enhanced in some ways himself, and the C virus just doesn't affect him at all. So obviously, he's kind of like the ideal candidate for a cure for that virus. And that then leads us up to the events of Resident Evil 6 and the campaign that plays out when you play as Jake and Sherry. So that's basically it. That is kind of like the bridge of events between the two games. In terms of a return for Sherry, I would imagine possibly. I do feel like she's of importance and it's quite a big deal in the universe now, especially considering who her parents were and the fact that she does still carry the G virus in some sense, which is basically one of the original viruses. There is potential that she does return. I'm not sure when or where it would fit. Obviously, the rumors currently are that in Resident Evil 9, the 4 original characters are in it. I don't really believe that, but we'll wait and see. In terms of Sherry though, I think there's potential to bring her back, but I'm not sure where it would fit, if that makes sense. But who knows, maybe they'll figure something out. As always, though, do let me know your thoughts on the character. Do you think she's a good character? Do you think she should return? Do you not like the character? Do let me know of any kind of opinion you have on the character. I'm always interested to know. Next character we'll probably be covering is Billy Cohen from Resident Evil 0. A very interesting character. Again, one that hasn't been seen in a while for certain reasons. But yeah, thank you all for coming by. Again, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And I'll catch you all tomorrow for another video.